Welcome to this session. My name is Dr. Gikadi Joyce, and we are moving on with our course, Methods of Teaching ICT, or Subject Methods in ICT Studies. So it's a continuation following our previous sessions. So today we are going to look at approaches that we use in teaching computers as a subject. So we are now getting into more detailed content. What are the approaches and methods? So when we use the word approach, it's more broader. Then within approaches, we are going to have some narrower focus. Then we look at specific methods. And this is the next phase of our course. We shall go through this session, and then in the following sessions, we shall continue with the same or related aspect about methods that are used. So now we begin by looking at what are we calling a method. So when you talk about teaching method, we are referring to ways or a systematic procedure that we employ so that we are able to guide pupils or students in school in order to accomplish the curriculum goals. So what is that systematic procedure? That's what we are calling the methods. So there are various methods based on the need of a particular lesson we teach, as we are going to be seeing. At the beginning, then, we note what are the key considerations. What do we have to bear in mind as we select any of the methods or a combination of methods? What are the key considerations before you choose a teaching method? So there are various methods. They'll be part of what we are learning, and we shall continue to learn in the subsequent sessions. So one of the key considerations is that every teacher, like you are training to be, should have capacity to use different methods. So don't concentrate on one area. Don't say you like this. So as you train, be open-minded to understand and see application of every method possible in your area. And you have to be particular when you are studying to be a computer studies teacher, so which are the relevant methods, and therefore be open-minded to build that capacity. Then also another key consideration to note is that no single method is sufficient to cater for all needs. So we need to know that we have to integrate new methods, combine them based on need. So that is a key consideration. So be always open-minded to see what other potential may another method have to improve what I'm trying to do. So again, you need also to consider what is the mental and physical activities that should be taking place for that skill to be developed. So what are the mental and physical capabilities that your student need to develop? So if you are teaching networking, it may be different from when you are teaching web designing. The kind of required capabilities, physical activities involved, the mental involvement, the keenness required from your learners whom you are teaching. So you need to take care, depending on the content, you'll focus on specific content. We also need to think about a variety of methods adopted in teaching that can make your teaching more effective and interesting. So the key point here, we are not just using a method because we know how to use it, but let's be focused more on the outcome, on the learners. What will be effective and more interesting in the interest of our learners. And that is why today we are using more of the word learning than teaching, because the end result or our deliverable is to how much learners achieve, not necessarily how much we teach. So the next key consideration is on we need to provide use method in a way they provide a variety of related experience and activities for individuals as well as groups. So as you choose methods, note that they need to support both individual learning and group learning. That is how we can summarize that point. And it is in these that our learners are going to get developed fully. So that is according to the principles of learning, that learners need capacity to learn in groups or opportunity to learn in groups and individually. So we also need to consider the scope. What is the scope required? Creativity. at individual level or maybe at the level of education. So that's also important. So we should also be able to take into account does our method enable students to develop skills for self-study and to process information independently. So the method must also be able to promote that goal. So as you select the method, reflect on those considerations. That's why we are calling them considerations. So another important consideration is on we need to simulate, or rather the method should be able to stimulate further learning and exploration, new discovery, so that students don't stop where we end the lesson. So does your method do that? So that's one other point of reflection. It should also be relevant to the objective of the curriculum. That one we already said, that if you are using a method that may not or that will not meet the curriculum goal in terms of particular topic, then there will be a problem. However interesting, however you like it, as long as it is not connected to our instructional goal. So sometimes this is of importance when we want to adapt to situations. We are not in a static environment. So a particular situation, another consideration is the situationality. So a particular situation can require you to adapt a methodology in some way or to change your methodology. If we are teaching students when they have difficulties, they could be national calamities, pandemic, they could have difficulty, or there could be other interferences. So how do you choose a method? So a particular situation may dictate you adapting or changing or choosing a certain method. And of course, as part of pedagogy, you know, as my part of considerations that are important, the nature of the child or the learner. So every time the learner comes first. So what is the nature of the child? What is the capability? Are they having learning difficulties? So make every child involved, make it inclusive. So the method must be able to accommodate the level of your learners at individual level and as a group. So how do you balance those considerations? Then that's why it requires you to be trained and systematically develop that capacity to choose methods. So as we select methods, what do we do? Note that we need to have a very clear mindset. What is our criteria for selecting a teaching methods? And then note that when we select these methods, they are not exclusive. You can combine more than one method. They are not exclusive. So what is important is you take care of those considerations we have noted, and also think of factors that surround that. For example, in this case, I want to note human factors really affects how we select teaching methods and how we use them. This affects the teacher, the human factor, and the student. So which environment do you come from? Where were you trained? How are you trained? What is your personality? That's the human factors. They are likely to affect us in a very important way. The objective of the teaching, what is in the curriculum as an objective, then may also influence. Subject area. And even within computing, we are saying it's very different when you're teaching maybe networking as to when you're teaching systems analysis. Some things could be related, others could differ. Also, time and material is another factor that we need to consider. What materials are at your disposal? How much time are we learning our syllabus? And that returns us to the previous topic or sessions where we were talking about considering how do you utilize digital technologies like to simulate an environment if you don't have real-life materials. How can you simulate your environment so that you create a reality that will enable you to unpack the curriculum as required. Then we are also saying when you talk of objectives in the school or in the curriculum in terms of content, how is those or how are those objectives going to be implemented so that the relevant knowledge, skills, and attitudes are obtained. So we are not just teaching networking to have the technical know-how, but they must also develop skills that will enable long life learning, and also develop the right attitude. So then you select methods based on that ability so that you are able to influence your students' attitudes and skills as you impart the knowledge or as you support them to develop the knowledge. We talked about human factor. Learners are gifted differently, and therefore we need to bear in mind. So materials and resources, we have said, is very important consideration. So it's important we plan our lesson, we choose our methods, allowed those factors being into consideration. So what is the relationship then? What is the relationship between principles of learning and teaching methods? What is the relationship? Principles of learning and teaching methods. So what that idea brings in mind, you are teaching to deliver a curriculum, but then what is in action to make learning actually occur? So for example, the aspect of motivation. So we must, as we teach or we say we have taught, was there an enabling environment? Were learners motivated? So that is the kind of link we want to see, the relationship, that as you teach and you seek most optional, all options available, then, but does that bring about motivation? Does that meet with motivation or motivational environment for the learners? So then also there is another principle of active involvement. So as we select the method, it must also provide an environment that enables learners to get involved. So learning or teaching method is not about you as a teacher, it's about involving learners, and actually active involvement that stimulates more deeper learning. So the active on part of the learner to meet with their efforts as a teacher so that there is actual achievement of the goals in the syllabus, in the curriculum. So also another principle is about individual capabilities in terms of learning style and how the learners are able to be supported to achieve their goals as they adapt their learning styles to the required level so that they are able to benefit from that particular subject, that particular content. So then the teacher needs to put in control, to put a balance so that the principle of learning and teaching meet at some appropriate level. Otherwise, without that seamless integration, then and balancing, there will be a deficient, and that deficiency will mean we didn't achieve our goals, educational goals, or our curriculum goals. Now, at this point, I want to start talking about specific methods. What are specific methods of teaching? And because we want to understand and continue unpacking our understanding, so I want to say we have various ways to categorize teaching methods. And different authors, different experts have introduced new terms, but as we move on, we realize we still narrow down to the key concepts. So how do we classify teaching methods? That's what I want to talk about. How do we classify teaching methods? So according to a key expert by name Sulev, we have three major categories of teaching methods according to that expert. That is, we have all methods, observation methods, and practical methods. And note that those are categories. All methods, so that means they are spoken or they are delivered by speech, then observation, and then practical. So what are examples of each of these categories? What are examples? So what techniques can we put under all category? So all will include a lecture method, a discussion, a talk, a narration, So those are types of what we call all methods. So, and you see they are delivered by people talking, interacting, a discussion, a lecture. So observation is another category, broad category. So what is it about demonstration? Observation is about demonstration. You could use models, films, charts, etc. So you are demonstrating a concept using maybe apparatus, using charts, etc. or films. So they lie under the category of observation. And they are relevant in teaching computer studies. Then we have practical methods. So as the word implies, you realize it means you are doing some experiment, you are doing some laboratory work, like if it's computers, you'll be taking students to the computer lab. So those three categories. And then we are saying that we have examples in each of them. And now, what do you use when and how, and what to justify your use? So that is the key question. So as we think about these methods, we have seen them being used, but we have not thought about using them as the teachers. So now we are learning how to do that. So at this point, I want us to think aloud this. So we have said, for example, observation, lecture method is an example of an oral method. It's one of the most common oral method cross-board, even before you go to the other methods. So what we are doing, there are so many things you can talk about lecture methods or each of these methods, but I want to guide our discussion. So we want to know where is lecture methods more relevant, lecture related methods, where are they more relevant? And then what are the qualities of each of these methods? What are the qualities of the lecture methods? More lecture-related methods. And more importantly, what basic purpose does the lecture method serve? And then what makes a good lecture? So what are the qualities? And finally, we think about what are the strengths and limitations of each of those methods. The many methods we shall talk about in the course. There will be other approaches to classification beyond what we have, the three key broad categories. So, and we are going to be talking about them, but those are the key guiding aspects. So what is it about? What is the purpose it's serving? What are the qualities of a good method, whether it's a lecture or a discussion? Then when is it appropriate to be used? So what is the applicability? And then what will be its strength? And what is the likely limitations or weaknesses? So in terms of lecture, that affects all methods. So they'll have all our questions that we need to answer, if it's allowed, those aspects for each method. And if there is any other method to be discovered in future, because knowledge is continuous, then we shall see that we answer those questions. So according to what has been the experience of using lecture methods being the most commonly used, they are used maybe more importantly when we want to initiate a topic at the beginning of the lecture, or rather at course you want to introduce and begin with lectures before you go to the practical. And this affects us more as computer studies teacher. You are teaching a more practical based course, but you don't start with practicals, or even if you began with them, at some point you need a lecture, so that you are able to serve the purpose it's supposed to serve. So for example, we can say, what are the key four purposes the lecture method helps us to achieve? So a lecture has key strength in serving the purpose of motivating. So it enables us to motivate. It is also used to clarify. That's the second purpose, to motivate, to clarify, to review, and to expand. Those are the four basic purposes that makes lecture methods relevant. So when you want to do something that will promote student motivation, you could apply a lecture method. When you want to clarify a concept, when you are reviewing a concept, or expanding, so that you deepen the knowledge. And then those things will only happen. How do we achieve that? those four purposes. They will only happen when your lecture is well structured, when it has the right characteristics, when it can motivate students. So think about it, and you'll be reading more. What are characteristics of a good lecture, and at what point does it stop having any strength and becomes a weakness? That is a question I pose to you as a point of further leading and discussion. So the same as we go to the next method, demonstration, we choose observation as an example that lie under the category of demonstration. So what purpose does demonstration serve, and what makes a demonstration effective? So for example, a demonstration helps us to be able to apply a concept, to solve a problem, to review ideas. So you are demonstrating to students how to connect network cables so that you are able to have a networked environment. So you need to demonstrate that. So how will you make an effective one? So then you need to be keen on the key aspects, because by the end of the lesson, it is meant to support students master the content. And then as we think about the characteristic of demonstration, I have an example there that I want you to play during your free time. The YouTube caption with a clip on a demo. A demo about a session that you want to illustrate a concept, but then maybe you don't want to do it practically, or there is no resource to allow a practical session, or the demonstration is more effective before even they go to the practical. So then you'll be watching that video, and after you watch it, I want you to think about, the link is provided, I want you to think about, does that demo meet the characteristics that are listed? So I don't want to recite them, but I want you to think about, use the demo to think about, that's a good demo, but think, reflect, if it was mine, would I have surpassed the one given? How much would I have met the aspect of feasibility? Operators are well done, and it is a student can have an interactive environment, an explanation is given, etc. So think of whether your demo environment answers those questions after you play the video. So as we move on, then after you play the video, you are going to reflect, and guided by the parameters given, then you are going to review your understanding, and then you reflect, if you are the one preparing such a lesson, what would you have achieved and to what extent. So laboratory method is again a part of practical teaching method, and of course its immediate use in teaching computers is almost inevitable, being computer studies. So you cannot be having computers as a subject in your school and there is no lab, unless we want to apply the concept of teaching computers without computers. Anyway, that can be a discussion in another session, but we are saying you need to implement practical teaching methods. We need, maybe one of the key methods is laboratory. So laboratory method means that students will have an opportunity to verify and make deductions and inferences about what they learned. They are going to discover on their own. So that's they are going to explore and be on task on their own. And then as you do that, it means then they are learning by doing, and they are provided with a problem that they purposely solve or execute, and then they are supposed to evaluate and record their findings. So it makes the student engage with knowledge building more actively and more deeply. That has been said. What are the key advantages? It promotes learning. It also motivates students to think more critically. So that is very important. So as we come to an end, I want us to start asking these questions for ourselves, and I mentioned them earlier. for each of those methods. So what will be the key strengths and the limitations of each of those methods? That means you're thinking, where is it more applicable and where will it not be applicable? And then, where is it appropriately useful? And then another very interesting scenario to think about is, at what point do you combine them? When do you use a lecture, then you use a demo, then or do we start with a practical, and then in which way? So think about those, and we are going to be thinking this way as we engage with the content, with the examples given. Then you see whether, at what point would you think that today my lesson starts with a demo, then it becomes a lecture, and at some point we are going to have a practical. So I'm calling them review questions because they are reflective. They'll make us engage. So for the lecture that we have had as part of the teaching method we are learning is to introduce the concept, to be able to understand what the concept is about. Then as we move to the other methods, then that is what we are saying we have to do, because at least you can see what is the purpose of a lecture, and that's what we are doing. So then it means the other things that we want to do, we must then adapt another method, and that is what we are saying we are going to exercise by doing, and then we see how it develops our thinking as future teachers. So at this point, I want to end my session, looking forward to meeting you in the next session, having engaged, having reflected, and we shall begin by a session that we are able to share our experiences and maybe continue engaging more productively. I wish to end there. Thank you until the next session.